guess I could pop my mic up first. That'd be really bright of me, wouldn't it? Anyway, good afternoon. That feels weird to say to everybody. Normally I'm saying good evening, but it's good afternoon because I'm not doing this on my normal time. But anyway, somehow I screwed up the when I put in the description for YouTube. I have Michelle Latham is back, and that is not right because I have Sam and Trish Britton with me from MOLibertyRadio.us. So I'm going to bring them up, and we're going to talk. One of the things we're going to talk about today, but we always get into several topics because that's how we roll, is going to be the Supreme Court's opinion, decision, however you want to word it, on affirmative action. I've got some audio that I'm going to play with several interviews from Thomas Sowell. It's about 9 minutes long. But that's some of the things I'm going to cover. We're going to cover in this episode, so let me start the recording, and we shall resume the Freedom Talk.
In the restaurant of life, we're putting freedom back on the menu. It's the Missouri Liberty Report with John Williams, working with grassroots organizations and legislatures to make Missouri the freest state in the nation. Let freedom ring.
All right, folks, and we're back with another edition of the Missouri Liberty Report. For those of you on the YouTube side of things, there are some pop-up storms that could be coming and hitting my area. So if the stream suddenly stops, there's a good chance the electricity flickered. It's raining outside right now, but there's a chance of gusty winds and some hail. So with that being said, if you lose me on YouTube, well, then we'll have to start all over because the board will go out too. And then we'll all be screaming over here in the Owensboro area. So anyway, without further ado, actually before I start, for those of you who download, listen on radio, view the live stream on YouTube, I appreciate you very much. I had a video pulled down last week. On Monday or Tuesday, I got an email saying that YouTube pulled down a video from, it's been probably last year. Patrick Holland was on with me. It got pulled. So be aware that could be coming up very soon. Unfortunately, well, not unfortunately. I have to move where I don't have to worry about the censorship. There's a good chance that I will be moving over to Rumble quite soon, especially if they hit me with a strike, because I'm not going to stop saying what I'm saying because I'm afraid of a strike. But if they hit me enough, then, you're a week out, no live streaming. So I'm not going to do that. I get that strike, I will put out all the information I can. But yeah, I would assume that quite soon, I'd say probably maybe within a month, I will be making the move over to Rumble, and YouTube can go take a long jump off a short cliff. So anyway, with that, Sam and Trish Britton, how are you doing this afternoon?
Oh, we're fine. We're fine. Thank you for having us.
You bet. And I have to preface this show with one thing. John was talking about how this was not his normal schedule. And, of course, my thought is, it couldn't happen better for an abnormal guy.
You got that crap right. Woo!
Now, you would bore us to death if you were normal, so...
Yeah, I'm sure some people would enjoy it, but, yeah, I'd probably bore you guys. And my friends would be bored to death, but... The other people around me be like, somebody must have medicated him because he's not acting himself.
Yeah.
So before we get too carried away, I have about a 2-minute clip of this video that I found. I had seen it several months ago, and I have yet, because the clip doesn't name the movie. I have no idea what the movie name where this clip comes from. I don't know what the name of the movie is. But it's a 1980s film of some kind. I recognize one of the actors in it from some other movies that that were from the 80s. I want everybody to hear this clip because I want to talk about this before we get into the affirmative action decision brought down by the Supreme Court. Was that Friday? So I want everybody, or Thursday maybe. I want everybody to listen to this because, sometimes Hollywood tells you exactly what's going on. And you think it's just make-believe, and it's really not make-believe. They're telling you. So, again, this is about a 2.5-minute clip, maybe not quite that much. But everybody take a listen to this. I think you're going to find it very interesting.
Okay, yes, we are bored. We're all bored now. But has it ever occurred to you, Wally, that the process that creates this boredom that we see in the world now may very well be a self-perpetuating, unconscious form of brainwashing created by a world totalitarian government based on money, and that all of this is much more dangerous than one thinks, and it's not just a question of individual survival, Wally, but that somebody who's bored is asleep, and somebody who's asleep will not say no? See, I keep meeting these people. I mean, just a few days ago, I met this man whom I greatly admire. He's a Swedish physicist, Gustav Bjornstrand, and he told me that he no longer watches television, he doesn't read newspapers, and he doesn't read magazines. He's completely cut them out of his life because he really does feel that we're living in some kind of Orwellian nightmare now, and that everything that you hear now contributes to turning you into a robot. And when I was at Findhorn, I met this extraordinary English tree expert who had devoted his life to saving trees. Just got back from Washington, lobbying to save the redwoods. He's 84 years old. He always travels with a backpack because he never knows where he's going to be tomorrow. And when I met him at Findhorn, he said to me, "Where are you from?" And I said, "New York." He said, "New York, yes, that's a very interesting place. Do you know a lot of New Yorkers who keep talking about the fact that they want to leave but never do?" And I said, "Oh, yes." And he said, "Why do you think they don't leave?" I gave him different banal theories. He said, "Oh, I don't think it's that way at all." He said, "I think that New York is the new model for the new concentration camp, where the camp has been built by the inmates themselves, and the inmates are the guards, and they have this pride in this thing they've built. They've built their own prison, and so they exist in a state of schizophrenia, where they are both guards and prisoners, and as a result, they no longer have, having been lobotomized, the capacity to leave the prison they've made, or to even see it as a prison." And then he went into his pocket and he took out a seed for a tree and he said, "This is a pine tree." He put it in my hand and he said, "Escape before it's too late." See, actually for 2 or 3 years now, Chiquita and I have had this very unpleasant feeling that we really should get out. And we really should feel like Jews in Germany in the late 30s. Get out of here. Of course, the problem is where to go, because it seems quite obvious that the whole world is going in the same direction. See, I think it's quite possible that the 1960s represented the last burst of the human being before he was extinguished, and that this is the beginning of the rest of the future now, and that from now on there'll simply be all these robots walking around, feeling nothing, thinking nothing, and there'll be nobody left almost to remind them that there once was a species called a human being, with feelings and thoughts, and that history and memory are right now being erased, and soon nobody will really remember that life existed on the planet. Oh.
Now, isn't that an interesting take? I thought that was great.
Yep, they always tell you in the movies where they're going, and aren't we experiencing all the gaslighting and stuff now?
Yeah. I ran across it, never seen the movie before, and I was like, I mean, he completely nailed it on the head. The thing about New York City, and we hear this from a lot of people in a lot of metropolitan areas, don't we? How, man, I really want to get out of there, but they just can never seem to bring themselves to do it. And they built their own prison. The inmates built the prison. I don't know, it just kind of blew my mind. It's like, wow, that is dead on. Like, dead on.
Wow.
Yeah.
It reminds me of that. What was that other famous movie with Howard Beale? Network.
Network.
Yeah, where he gets up and just
Network.
rants. Yeah, that was. There was all kinds of great clips from that show.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it was dead on, dead on. I don't know. I just found it really interesting. I'm like, I got to use that on the next show. Because I knew I was going to have you guys on, and I'm like, I gotta have it on. I gotta play that clip when Sam and Trish are on with me, because that's just too good.
Yeah. We've known this for years because we've caught some of these things. There was another one out there called Lone Gunman, in which they were in that movie. It was a series, I think, if I remember correctly, that the Fox network was running at the time. And one of the things they talked about in that was crashing planes in the World Trade Towers. And, of course, what happened later on? Well,
Yeah. Well.
now we know the rest of the story.
Yeah, isn't that strange, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it
It's you just look around and you sit and wonder, I don't know. You just kind of go, what the heck is going on? What are we doing? I mean, you just watch people in action and you go, again, I don't want to get too much into it because, it's one of those things. But I was at a conference from Sunday. Well, the conference actually started Monday. We had a meeting Sunday night. But from Monday morning till Friday morning, I was at a conference. I was sent there by the local union that I belong to. And for the most part, it wasn't bad. But when they got into politics, guys, good God Almighty, I wanted to jam something into my eardrums. Okay, here's what bothered me the most, because I knew a lot of where they were going to come from. Okay, it's the same. They normally vote for Democrats. Blah blah blah.
Oh yeah.
So that part of it's coming, and that's I expect that. It's not a shocker. But what I've never heard at any type of union function was a man stand up in the conference, one of the guys that taught one of the classes, and say that he's a white man and he knows that he has this, what they call it, white privilege, and that he doesn't have the right to tell a woman what to do with their own bodies. And I'm like, God, I'm thinking, really, dude? Really, that's what you're going to, yeah, you're white, I'm white, there are Hispanics here, there are blacks here. I think we can move past that. Yeah, I think, we're all here. That proves that we can all get together and get along and not have to start discussing this kind of thing. It's like you're going to get up. What are you going to do next? You're going to go down and bow in front of a minority's feet and ask forgiveness? I mean, why are we doing this? Why can't we just come here and be educated? But really, he was the only one out of all of them. So he must be he didn't drink the Kool-Aid like a glass of Kool-Aid. He drank the whole gallon right after it was made. He got it fresh off the faucet. I was just, so me and one of the other guys that was with me, we were sitting across the table from each other in the last meeting before we took off. He's rolling his eyes. I'm rolling my eyes. I'm covering the smile on my face and chuckling and everything else because I'm like, this is just, it sounds uneducated. When people start talking like that, they sound uneducated to me. It used to be, I'm like, you sound like an idiot, which they do.
Yeah.
But they sound uneducated.
It's interesting. Can you hear me, John? I'm on the board, so I can mute the weather radio.
You're good.
Okay. What is interesting out of that, you bring to mind a clip which comes up. There's a show that we run in the mornings here on Missouri Liberty Radio called the Markley, Van Camp, and Robbins Show. We run it usually it runs about 7 o'clock and runs till about 9 o'clock before it's all over with. And in the end, they have this thing they call Nimrods in the News. And one of the things that comes out in that Nimrods in the News is a clip from Trump in the background saying, I love the poorly educated.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, of course you do. Of course so many of you politicians do. Because you can manipulate them and use them as your useful idiots, just like you're doing in so many other ways. And you got your censorship boys out there, like on one network that we've been talking about. One platform anyway, that'll do their dirty work for them because their ideas wouldn't hold up if they were exposed to the light of day. And so, and it doesn't matter if it's Trump or who it is. They love people they can manipulate. And I always say, if you don't want to be poorly educated, then quit paying attention. Quit paying a damn bit of attention to these people.
Yeah. Stop watching them. Just stop. I know it's withdrawal pains, but you can do it. Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah, listen, it is really hard for me, for the most part, unless it's something historical that's kind of unique, especially if it's something on like World War I or World War II, something like that. I can sit down and watch some of it if it's kind of newish information, something I haven't seen before. But for the most part, if you try to get me to just sit down and watch TV for the most part, I just start tuning it out within 10 minutes because it's uninteresting. After not watching it for so long, now it's become uninteresting to me. It actually puts me to sleep a lot of times because it's so boring. It's so
Oh boy, you wake up in a bad dream later.
yeah, yeah. It's so mindless and boring. Like, they're not even. Here's the thing. I do enjoy certain types of movies. There are certain movies that I do enjoy. But Hollywood and TV in general, for the most part, they're uninventive. There's no real creativity anymore. It's like a machine. You just turn the handle and it just spews out manure. There's no even. They just have to keep going back and remaking old stuff. And it's like, you people are so brainless, you can't even hardly come up with original content anymore. And if it is, it's so woke that you'll vomit on your shoes and all over the couch or wherever you're sitting watching this show, because there's so much. It's just like they flew a B-52 full of BS over the studio and just dropped manure all over it because it's just strewn with the most awful stupidity, and you're just sitting there going, wow, this is the best you can come up with. And if that is the case, and a lot of people still watch it, what's that say? What's that say for the yeah? if they're just soaking it in, but you can see that there's no real creativity there, there's nothing that kind of piques your curiosity or like, makes your imagination go wild because it's something like really unique, and it's not laden with stupidity. I mean, yeah, I sit there and I'm just like, ugh. Now, I will admit that I did turn on the news most days up there because I was looking for the weather. What's the weather going to be like? And then they were just rattling off stuff, and I'm like, how? Between that and all the commercials, I don't know how someone can sit in front of a television for 3 or 4 hours, especially with the commercials, when you're trying to get to the information, but you have to go through like 14,000 pharmaceutical advertisements to get to the information that you want. I don't know how people do it. I don't.
Oh, I know.
I know everything is brought to you by Pfizer or one of those, mostly Pfizer.
Yeah,
just about everything.
GSK, all of them, Johnson & Johnson. Yeah, that's all you're going to see.
Yep.
Feeling like crap? Take this pill. Side effects include feeling worse than you originally did. I need to go get that pill.
Yeah, your balls might fall off and your bowels might fall out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd been a heck of a mess.
Yeah, and it's just like, I don't know. I don't know how people do it. I just I don't understand how they.
Well, and besides, the music is so blame loud. They're like a frontal assault. Like you're getting assault across your eyeballs, your ears, your face. They're trying to kill you. Kind of like.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, it's that's one thing. There are a couple shows that I used to watch, and I don't. If I ever watch TV, I don't watch it very loud. But you'll be watching something, and then like the music goes blaring, but the voices are low, and I'm like, who the hell's in charge of the mix team on this in this production? Because they suck. Because then you're sitting there, you're turning the volume up and down because the TV's like.
It's on the way to do the compression.
Yeah, there's a lot of tricky techniques they can use to make the commercials, for example, stand out above the content, like adding a lot more dynamic range compression and that kind of thing.
Well,
there's all kinds of stuff.
No one's taught them that, which doesn't surprise me. They were too busy being told how horrible it is for them to be white to learn audio compression skills in college or whatever they went to.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it's and even I'm finding even more in some what they refer to as right wing. I hate this term right wing, left wing, because last I knew I didn't have wings. I haven't been able to fly yet. If you ever see me flying toward your house, John, then you know I adopted wings.
Well,
we're in trouble if you fly.
Here's the thing: if you think about it, and you've probably both said this already, so if I repeat something you've already said, I apologize. But when you say left wing, right wing, how many, I mean, most average birds, how many wings do they have? They have two. That means it's two wings of the same freaking bird.
Same bird.
Yeah,
You got
boy, ain't that the truth?
And I'm not a member of either wing, so.
In fact,
No.
you'd rather just grow two wings and fly away from all this nonsense, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be glad to chop the wings off of the existing bird.
Make
That way we wouldn't have to worry about it anymore.
when they come when they come in for a landing, they just crash nose first into
Yeah.
something. You're like, that was awful fun to watch. Can we do that to another bird? And just
Yeah,
keep
my reaction to that would be relief.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, I don't know. I'm just, it's when yeah, Casey says two wings of the same bird of prey. That's a good way to put it. That's a very good way to put it.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, yeah. So I gotta preface what I'm about to say with the story. So when I would go fishing with my dad, he had a really good friend several years ago, and they would go fishing all the time. I mean, spring through fall, they'd probably go fishing once, probably at least one Saturday a month. And I would go with them at certain times, and we'd be flying, and we'd see the turkey vultures up in the air, circling around. And Dad would always tells me, "Oh, there's your buddies. Your buddies are up there flying around. They're looking for you, you know." But then you think about it, and you're thinking to yourself when you describe, even though turkey vultures aren't birds of prey, they're carrion birds. But whatever, it makes you always go, "Don't stand still. They'll come down and they'll think you're dead and try to feed off your carcass." So you always got to keep moving, because these vultures are circling overhead, waiting for you to sit still so they can come pick your pockets clean. It's astounding to me, and it's a little heartbreaking also. But hey, these are the topics we always talk about. This, I mean, I know you guys do. I do the same thing. We talk about the uneducated masses, the brainwashed, or it's sad. I feel like that word is kind of not a slur, but it's just like an insult that people throw out, because we always hear, "Oh, they're just brainwashed," and "Oh, they're ignorant, they're stupid," or whatever. But
Actually, they're
brain dirtied.
oh yeah, that's right. You guys say that all the time, and I've never kept that in the Rolodex in my head of other verbiage to use. Ubber verbiage to use.
Yeah.
I gotta
See,
be.
you're brainwashed. You and I are brainwashed because our brains are clean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're clean of all the crap out there.
I'm
So
sorry.
we're actually brainwashed.
Yeah.
They're brain dirty. Yeah, I'm sorry. I got a bean hole over my eye tooth, and I can't see what I'm saying. So you'll have to forgive me there. Well,
That's all, folks.
yep. I'm just stuttering and stammering again. It's been a long week. I mean, like I said, I didn't have a bad time. I met a lot of great people. There are a lot of characters at that meeting that made it really fun, just from the bantering back and forth. So
Yeah.
it did make it fun, but at the same point, you're like, I'm ready to come home now. I told Trish before we got started, saying I'm such a homebody anymore. I'm away from the house a couple of days. I'm like, yep, I'm done, ready to go back home now.
I know how it feels, because I know we're like that when we travel any length of time. We just want to get back in our own habitat.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, like I said, I wasn't even around I wasn't around a bunch of idiots that made me want to gouge my own eyes out. So I don't understand why I wanted to go home. You know what else is awful of me? I feel like a bad human being, but then at the same time I don't. If you have somebody come to your house, and then they stay for a few days, and you start thinking after day 2 or 3, you're like, okay, you guys can leave now. No matter how much you like them.
You're like dead fish, kind of like
Yeah, you
they
stink
stink.
after 3 days.
I like that. We got some friends from Minnesota coming out. Now they're not staying here, I don't think. I think they might be staying with my daughter. I don't think there's. Well, no, we don't have room for them here, so they may be staying at Cheyenne's house, and I'll have to tell her. But just tell them after 3 days, you guys are starting to be like dead fish. You're stink. Get out of here, and then we'll see what happens. All right, so I want to play this. It's 9 minutes and 6 seconds long because I want to go into the Supreme Court opinion on affirmative action. And I want to. Here's the thing. I guess this is a lazy way to do it, but I know that there are people. There's these white idiot liberals out there, and there may be minorities that think that this is the worst thing that's happened since the 1960s, before civil rights and all that. But I figure, okay,
I know where you're going.
I figure if it's coming from a black economist named Thomas Sowell, a guy that whose friend Walter Williams said the reason they don't talk to him anymore is because you will not get him to change his views. You cannot argue him because you can't argue with him because he knows the facts. So they literally don't even talk about what he writes anymore because he will just beat them. I mean, he doesn't beat them up, but he beats them up with facts. So they just ignore everything he says.
Mentally, he beats them up, you mean?
Yeah, mentally, it's a beat down. So they just decide, well, I'm not going to. We're just not going to talk.
What can you do with mental just except beat them?
That's true. That's true. So I'm going to play this 9 minutes and 6 seconds of. I think it's a few different interviews with Thomas Sowell talking about. Now the title of this video, it's on YouTube, called "The Devastating Evils of Affirmative Action." Like I said, it's just a touch over 9 minutes long. I'm just going to let the whole thing. Yep, I'm going to let the whole thing play through. Son of a biscuit-eating basketball player. Yeah.
Don't let the whole thing play through.
That's right, play through. By the time I get done, I ain't going to be able to finish a sentence without Trish having to correct me. But I'm gonna let this whole video play through, and then we'll discuss it when it's all over. Let me make sure I got it.
Go for
it. You make another point in terms of intra-black relations, and that is, you say affirmative action for the most part has really benefited blacks who really didn't need affirmative action.
Affirmative action is a great way for black PhDs to get endowed chairs. It's a terrible way for some kid in the South Bronx to try to get his first job. What affirmative action does is create an incentive for people to hire those who have a proven track record, those who have degrees and things like that. It makes it more dangerous for the employer to hire an untrained person with no track record, because if he has to fire that person, then he's letting himself in for legal trouble. Whereas you can hire a white of very doubtful qualifications. If he doesn't work out, throw him out in the street the next week. You hire blacks of doubtful qualifications, throw them out in the street the next week, and you've got the NAACP, you've got the EEOC, you've got God knows who all to contend with. The employers have long ago figured this one out, and so they have not hired those blacks who are at all doubtful, either in terms of qualifications or simply not enough experience to know how good they are. You see this in the data. Blacks who have education and who have experience have been moving up on whites, and in some cases overtaking whites. If you look at blacks who have not finished high school, blacks who come from background of families that are broken and so forth, they are falling further and further behind, not only further behind the population in general, but further behind whites with the same disadvantages.
What do you blame for that? You're not blaming middle-class blacks who are beneficiaries of affirmative action, are you?
I'm blaming the incentives created by affirmative action, because when it comes to the incentives that are created, the businessman is going to try to protect himself whatever way he can, and that means hiring those blacks who are overqualified, who have a long track record, and so on. And that's what all the data show, that for example, black couples where the husband and wife are both college educated now make more money than white couples where the husband and wife are both educated. But the black female-headed family has lost real income in absolute terms over the past several years, and has fallen further behind white female-headed families. So the very opposite trends are going on at the same time, and you can't argue this because of blackness or racism, because both of them are black people. One group is shooting way ahead, one is falling further and further behind. And a large part of that reason, I believe, and the data seem to suggest, is because the incentives created by affirmative action and similar kinds of programs just make it too dangerous to take a chance.
Group preference policies known as affirmative action in the United States have existed in many other countries around the world, often longer than they have in the United States, and under a variety of names, such as positive discrimination in India and Britain, sons of the soil preferences in Malaysia and Indonesia, and reflecting the federal character of the country in Nigeria. Though based on a variety of rationales peculiar to particular countries, these group preference policies have had a remarkable similarity in their actual consequences, which have often differed considerably from the...
Okay, I'm a moron. I picked the wrong video, and I'm not going to go back and get the right one. So just slap me in the head, I'm stupid. Yeah, just go ahead and slap me in the head, I'm stupid. I had two different ones, and I thought that was it. And then when that started, I'm like, stupid! You picked the wrong damn video. But
Well, that was Thomas Sowell, wasn't it?
it was Thomas Sowell in the beginning, and then it went into something else, and I'm like, that's not the right video, idiot. But anyway, I got the main preface of what I wanted. I wanted the part where he talked about, you know, because of the Great Society and all this stuff with Lyndon Johnson, what he set up, and basically saying, hey, it'd be great if you just had more single parent households, because then you'll get this money, you know, and basically incentivizing a woman to kick her husband out of the house because she knows she's going to get a paycheck anyway once a month, and so, you know, there you go. And so I'll just tell you my beliefs. I believe that some people follow this affirmative action because they believe it actually works. But I also believe there's another group of people that use this doctrine because they want people dependent on the government. And I think there's two groups that fall. There are some people in government that think this actually works, but they're not looking at data. They're not looking at statistics. And there are maybe those above them that think that they're doing it because they want government to rule, and they want government dependency. I was talking about this with my wife. We had to go get some thyroid pills for the Dorgy earlier today. And we were talking about this subject because she's like, I don't see anything wrong with the Supreme Court overturning affirmative action. And I said, no, it's kind of racist. But here's my way of thinking. And Sam and Trish, I'll let you put your opinions in here. I feel like this is a way for the government to cover its own butt with their horrible education system, especially in the inner cities, where kids get awful education. And so to cover up the damage they've done in the inner cities and the poorer communities in America, they come up with this rule so some of those kids can go to college. But what Thomas Sowell argues is that, you know, Harvard, and MIT and some of these big schools, they get African Americans in there who might score higher than, let's say, 9. They might score in the top. They might score 90% better than the rest of the kids in America, but still educationally, they are not prepared for MIT, Harvard, some of these, or Berkeley, or whatever these big schools. So what affirmative action has done is it's actually pairing kids in colleges that they're not ready for, instead of pairing them in colleges that meet their educational standards that they've met so far. And instead of dropping out and failing out and then stuck with student loan debt and have no degree, nothing to show for it, they can go to a college, earn something in engineering or science, get a degree, and get out and get a better education. But I feel that affirmative action is just a way for government to cover its butt for doing such a poor job of educating these minorities in the poorest communities in America. What do you think?
Yeah, it could be a way of covering their butt, but for the poor education, they sick on everybody, and that kind of thing. Now, I would say for once it'll give them a chance to really get out there and do something. But will they? Is another question.
Depends on how educated they are, too.
Yeah.
I mean, here's the other thing. There's another interview, and I don't know if it's the interview you have, John, where Thomas Sowell made the statement that the greatest thing that ever happened to him was being born before the civil rights movement. Have you ever seen that one?
I think I have, and he also said that if both his parents hadn't died and he moved up to Harlem, where a family member was smart and taken him to a library at the age of 8 years old, and if he would have not found a public library until he was a teenager, he wouldn't be where he is right now, because
yeah, he'd have been lost cause. Yeah.
he said that how did he put it? Well, he said that if he'd have grown up in Harlem 20, 30 years later, the education that he got at a Harlem school in his day, he wouldn't have gotten in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and beyond, and he wouldn't be where he was at either. He makes that point a lot about the education he was able to get in a Harlem school back then compared to, the past 60 years, how much worse it's gotten, and it makes it much harder for these kids to succeed. So he's made a lot of references to how lucky and how blessed he is in his early life to have these things that he got to be a part of before these inner cities and the education got terribly, terribly horrible.
Well, see what they used to do, John, back in those days before affirmative action, everybody was hired on merit. In other words, if you can do the job, then you have the job. But if you can't do the job, now was there some discrimination in some cases? Yes, there probably was. But as is always the case, the government needs something to ride in on so that they can either take an existing problem and make it worse, or take a non-existent problem and make it a problem.
Yeah.
And this was another case, exactly what they did with the blacks. And I've said on my radio show many times, much to the dismay of some of my own listeners, and that is the fact that the blacks were the guinea pigs for where we are now. Now we're all the blacks on the plantation, as opposed to the inner city communities. While everybody else was, running down the blacks, and I mean, granted, there was certainly enough craziness going on. There's enough dumbed down people in the black community, but there's some dumbed down people in the white communities as well. And I've stated for years that the Great Society was the practice run for what they were going to try to pull on all the rest of us. And now we're starting to move in that direction where they want to take countless numbers of the entire population and put them on the same welfare type programs. I mean, first it was blacks. I mean, just look around even out here where we are, John. If you look around the area, how many of the people here where we live locally in Owensville is made up of people that are welfare moms, as an example?
Yeah, it's the numbers are getting higher in this area.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, people can't see past their own noses on this. People have to come to the realization that because of institutions like the Great Society, that our nation as a whole, a good part of the population, what do they say? Oh, just go to the government and get yourself some help. Not private organizations, not what do they call them? God dang it. What's the word I'm looking for? Non-profits and things like that. Oh, just go down to, the welfare office and you can get yourself a check. The churches, the non-profits, a lot of these organizations have been shown the door by government and the handouts there, and then the dependency thereafter that kicks in on
moved on to worse things.
Yeah.
They moved on to worse things, John.
Worse things.
Right.
Worse things.
I've got an article that I'm going to send out on the email list after the show notes on Monday regarding churches in this country that are involved in child trafficking.
Yeah.
It's a big deal, and most of it's 501c3 churches because they nestle up with the Children Family Services, which is big in child trafficking. And see, this all ties in the same way, because a lot of these people that are down on their luck, whether black or whatever, wind up going to these churches seeking help, and then then a lot of times the churches will take the kids away from them and then run them through the child trafficking networks, like through Children Family Services and that kind of thing. So I've got a bunch of stuff that we're going to be putting out on that one. And so this is why I say that this is why I get so aggravated all the time with people who are not critical thinkers, because they buy into everything government and all these institutions say. I mean, it's like right now. I mean, how many times do you remember you were growing up? People always talked about how great it was to go to church. Go to church. Like, you're not in church. You should be in church. And I always found something wrong with that. Or the worst thing that I used to find all the time, used to drive me nuts, is they'd say either you need to be in church or you're not properly churched. And I'm thinking, if being properly churched is this, I don't want nothing to do with it.
Yeah, why would I want something to do with that?
But anyway, this ties into it too, John, because now, in fact, this is the real reason. A lot of it is the real reason for why the borders are open, because they can get countless numbers of children from over in Honduras and various other places and bring them in here and run them through the child trafficking networks as well. And this is why people have got to wake up and understand that you're either going to have to learn to take responsibility for yourself and for your kids, or else. I mean, there's not going to be this little institution around the corner to save you. I mean, this is how corrupt it is. And and it's all brought to you by the U.S. government on down through the churches. I mean, remember Bush and his faith-based initiative stuff, George Bush Jr.?
Yeah, faith-based initiatives, yeah.
That was all about paying the churches to get involved in this kind of stuff and to get involved in, teaming up with child welfare agencies to get these kind of things going. And this is why I say government has no business being involved in anything when it comes to churches. And for crying out loud, if you're going to attend a church, make sure it's not tax exempt, because this is where a lot of this stuff is.
By the way, this taking the kids away is an attribute of communism.
For sure it is, yeah, because the state thinks they know better.
Yeah, thinks they know better.
In reality, they just turn them over to pedophiles, and then
gross.
This is what we wind up with. So, all of society is being manipulated. This is why I say that now we're starting to find out, as I've indicated was going to happen for a long time. I said, it's the blacks now. I said, before everybody just runs down the blacks, we're all going to wind up being the blacks on the plantation. And sure enough, here we are now, and we're starting to feel the effects of it. I mean, when you go to work, they don't call the place where you go to apply for a job the personnel office anymore.
No.
It's called human resources. Words mean things. You are a resource.
It's something to be used up.
Yeah. So people need to keep that in mind. Think about
you
that.
better
Words
get
mean
while
things.
getting's good.
Yeah. So anyway.
Well, and I want to.
There you go.
To your point about the Bush Jr. I remember when I used to watch Real Time with Bill Maher, and he was interviewing someone who had been to D.C., and he's like, these people from these churches and, like, let's say the Southern Baptist Convention or whatever, they go to D.C.
They're big into this.
Right. They go to D.C. and they're lobbying, he said what these people don't understand is, like, they'll go into an office, they'll talk to these people, right, whoever they are, and he's like, when they walk out of the room, the people they were just talking to were laughing at them behind their back. He's like, they have no idea what they're doing. He's like, they're going up there and they're begging and pleading for this stuff. He said, as soon as they leave the room, they're being mocked. They're being laughed at. He's like, if these churches were smart, they'd stop going to D.C. And, and even when I was kind of a brain-dead liberal, I understood that. Like, why are the churches going to D.C.? Why are they giving money to politicians? I even felt that way back then. Like, why are they doing this? They shouldn't be. That's the last place they should be going.
Be giving money to, yeah.
I mean, because that's taking money that you would think would be clean, and then you're turning it into dirty money. That's the way I feel about it. You're turning it into filthy. You're turning it into blood money.
Filthy lucre, they call it.
Yeah, there you go. So yeah, I never understood that policy.
What it's called in the scriptures, anyway.
But it's like you're going up and you're giving money to people who, now even though like when Bush announced he was going to go into Iraq and Afghanistan, you had, I can never remember the guy. It's on one of those big cable Christian networks, was up there saying that we were going into Babylon and wiping it out. And I'm like, oh, wow, dude. You are really, really sucking at the teat of government. I mean, he definitely wanted to be buddy-buddy with Bush. And
they're really smoking something that ain't the good stuff either.
No, because I've smoked plenty of good stuff, and it didn't make me like war any better than I do now. I don't know. It's another one of those. I get that's the worst part, I guess, because you guys have gone down a rabbit hole much farther than I have. That's what sucks about going in the rabbit hole sometimes, is because
it's hard. It's gross.
Yeah, because you think that you're like, okay, we know it's nasty, but then you read more and you're like, God, really? It's really that bad?
Yeah. Ugh. I'm sure we haven't heard the half.
Oh, we will, and that's the other thing. And maybe for some people it might be good to not know everything about, like the child trafficking, these pedophilia rings. I mean, if you really knew the totality of it,
oh yeah,
it's hard to say what that could cause a human being to do. To other people.
Well, you have to lead them gradually, John, because here's the problem. The problem is if you don't share this stuff with them, then something happens to the kid, and one of their kids winds up in one of these rings. I mean, because you remember, as an example, when the Obama administration, the tail end of that, we had these clown scares going on all over the area.
Yeah, kind of.
That was part of all this stuff. These people sneaking around, dressing up, and something looks nice, so they'd warm up to the kids. Yeah. And then they could snatch the kids. Like parent puts their kid in the cart. At the grocery store, they got that seat in the front of the grocery cart where they stick the baby or whatever. A mom turns around, looks for something on the grocery store shelf. Next minute, the kid's gone because somebody's already snatched the kid or whatever. And that's part of the problem. And it's like, okay, how do you? There's a number of things that are on my mind that I want so badly to share with people, but it's like, okay, first of all, if you're going to share it, what do you want to do? What do you want to accomplish? Do you want to do something about it, or what? You certainly don't want to share it with them just to scare the hell out of them, and that's it. That's not it. But by the same token, people need to know. I mean, like right now, I just talked to a person here. It was a week ago Wednesday, who I'm not going to mention here by name because I don't have their permission, but her husband just recently died due to cancer. And the first question that I want to know is, did they take the shot? And if they did, then the thing is, okay, there are things you can do to lessen the effects of them, but even so, I mean, did they take them? The other thing is that you want so badly to tell them, if you took them and you're doing okay, don't take any more of them, because you may not. And what's interesting about that whole story is the CDC just came out this week. In fact, I got to track down the story, admitting now that when the people took those shots, some people got placebos and others got variations of the dose, which now explains why some people died, some people were just ill, and some people didn't suffer any effects at all. So now it's finally come out in the open. It's exactly what Trish and I suspected, and I suspected from the get-go. I said, you can't have this go the way it's going without these people having taken placebos, because poison is poison by any other name. And so the only conclusion I could come to, well, now, sure enough, now the CDC's finally confirmed that this is indeed the case, that some people just got saline when they went to take their shots, and others got the full dose, which killed them, and others got variations of the dose. So there was no there was all kinds of variation on the lots. The lots weren't standard and all this kind of stuff. I mean, when this fully breaks open, if it ever does, which it's going to be a determined public that's going to make it happen. This is going to be something that is going to be breathtaking as far as the amount of corruption that occurred. And so, but the point I'm making out of all this is that there are too many cases, once you learn the agendas, this gets to a point where it doesn't surprise you. I mean, even like when the original scare came out in 2020, Trish and I weren't surprised by it at all. I was already calling it out on the radio before most people had a chance to turn around. And that's because we've been in this so long, ever since starting probably all the way back as far as 1992 and 93, and then just gradually moving on to the point where we are now. We've been in this so long that while everybody else is surprised and in panic and everything else, Trish and I are sitting around just saying, ho-hum, just another scare from the government.
Yep.
Yeah, again, hearkening back, I remember telling guys at work, I said, I'm telling you, when this is all over, you're going to figure out how bad they screwed us over, how bad they screwed people over. I said, I'm telling you. Catherine Dreyer is in the live chat right now. She says she has a T-shirt. It says, I identify as a conspiracy theorist. My pronouns are told you so.
Wow, that's good, Catherine. Wear that everywhere.
Yeah, we need one of those as well. I still want to get the one. I still got to order. There's one that I ran across online. I don't remember where I saw this T-shirt at, but it said, I was going to dress up as a Democrat for Halloween, but I couldn't fit my head up my ass. And I was like, oh, my God. That would be a great T-shirt.
Now, that would look kind of weird, John.
It would, but, I mean, that's
have
a great...
all kinds of visual connotations.
Oh, well.
That'd be a great T-shirt to wear. I would, especially to work. I work with a lot of Democrats. She says she gets some head turns with that one. Yeah, I bet you do, Catherine. That's a great shirt. That is a fantastic shirt. Leave it to Catherine to have a shirt like that, you conspiracy theorist, you. Well, we got about a little less than 5 minutes left, guys, before I got to cut for KEYK. Is there something else? Because, I mean, you know how it is. We do an open forum here. Something else you guys want to talk about? Another subject something that's happened here lately that you want to bring up?
Well, like I said when I was talking about child trafficking, we've been hitting that real hard. In fact, there's one gal I want to get a hold of. If you want to follow this subject, there's a website called Health Impact News, and I urge everybody to go over there. The guy who hosts that site is a gentleman by the name of Brian Shohavi, and Brian is meticulous with his documentation on everything that he covers.
He's got links to God knows everywhere.
Yeah, but he's been following a gal who lives in Maryland who was a victim of child trafficking by the name of Jennifer Guskin. And I'm going to try to contact her. He had her email address posted because she wanted to try to get the word out just from whoever wanted to interview her on radio shows. And I hope, pray to God, the poor lady hasn't gotten spammed and everything else. But if I can get a hold of her, I'm going to bring her on for an interview, because when you listen to the videos or watch the videos that she has, that he has posted, he's gotten a hold of her videos so that these various platforms don't try to take them down.
Yeah.
And the stuff she went through when she was trafficked is just absolutely horrendous. I don't even want to get into it here, particularly if you've eaten anything recently, because it's a stomach-turning stuff. And but I do want to interview her, because I'm telling you, if this stuff doesn't stop, and I don't know how many listeners we have out there that are people who believe in God and are Christians or whatever, but there have been nations in the past, going clear back to the Roman Empire, that have been judged for things not even half as bad as what we're going through here. And I am convinced that if we don't turn this stuff around, I mean, we're in for a very painful experience, because once you start going down these roads and you take advantage of the most vulnerable, then nobody's safe. Because, I mean, if they can do it to the most vulnerable, then they do it to the elderly, and then after a while, then nobody's safe, because eventually people get hardened, and
Tell you what, there ought to be a run on millstones, I'll tell you.
There you go. Yeah. That's exactly right. But anyway, so that's something we're going to be getting into. Tomorrow night, Jennifer Ann Barker is going to be our guest with Informed Health Choice Missouri. Now, see, John, I'm starting to get tongue-tied like you. Anyway, she's going to be our guest, and we're going to talk about what she's doing in the 7 o'clock hour. And starting tomorrow night, we're going back to a 3-hour format from 6 to 9. So anyway, from 6 to 9, we'll be every week now. We'll be back to the 3-hour format. She's going to be on in the 7 o'clock hour, so that should be a very interesting show. And then we'll see where we go from there. There's some other people that'll probably be in the pipeline as well, but that's going to be our guest tomorrow night.
It'll be some really good stuff. All right, well, folks in the KEYK audience, thank you so much for joining me for another edition of the Missouri Liberty Report. Please, please, please be sure to check out molibertyradio.us, especially on Sunday nights at now 6 to 9. See, I got to change it, and I got to keep that fresh in my head. 6 to 9 p.m. Central Time, Off the Cuff Radio with Sam and Trish. Now, next week, I will have Senator Bill Eigel on, and we will be talking about his exploratory run for governor, and I'm sure he's got all kinds of different things that he wants to talk about. So it'll be a great conversation. Also, I got a call back from Representative Dan Castile. I called him this morning, and I'm waiting for him to call me back, and I'm going to try to get him on the 14th, and so we can talk about the past legislative session and things that he is passionate about, some things that he would like to get done here in the state of Missouri and how we can get more of our freedoms back and maintain those freedoms. So to all of you in the KEYK audience, again, thank you very much. Feel free to check out the YouTube stream and go to Spreaker or anywhere you get a podcasting app. If you would like the extended edition, just look up Missouri Liberty Report Plus. You can find the extended edition of this show. We'll see you all next week. All right, and moving on. I just had a thought, and now it's gone. Old man brain, old man brain.
You had a fleeting thought, and it fled.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, it grew an extra leg and really sped off. Son of a biscuit-eating basketball player. I hate when I do that. What's that?
He said he saw it go by.
Did you? Well, next time stick your foot out and trip it so I can get it back.
I'll be happy to, yes.
Oh, man alive. Son of a bitch. Skid-eating basketball. I almost said it. Whew. Shots fired almost. It is. Okay, here's a weather update, folks. Here in Owensville, it is flat pouring rain. I bet if you're in Owensville and you go out, as my dad used to say, it sounds like a cow peeing on a flat rock. That's what it looks like out there right now.
Well, there are severe thunderstorms now. Now, this is as of 2 p.m. Saturday. So, the 2 to 3 o'clock, probably just past 3 p.m. now at this point. But as it stands right now, there are severe thunderstorms over Crawford County, and they may be moving into other areas. I got the weather radio on. I can't. Here's a bulletin coming up now for those that are curious. I don't know if it's a flood warning or what, but
I just know that I saw the radar, and the heavy stuff is south of us, but we're just at the edge of this storm moving through. But man, is it! I mean, we need this rain. I just wish it wasn't raining quite so hard so the ground could soak it all up.
Yeah.
We need it bad because my yard. This is in the 11 years that I've lived here. This is the worst my lawn's ever looked. It looks bad. In fact, I had all intention. I thought this was coming later. I was going to go out and spread some fertilizer on the grass to kind of help it, help it with drought conditions a little better and green it up. And it's a little late for that.
Well, I'll tell you, right now, this stuff is moving fast. It's running like 45 to 50 miles an hour. So they're already starting to see stuff over in Jefferson County and over towards St. Louis.
Yeah. See, that's the thing. When I was up here's what sucked. This is the only thing that sucked about coming home. When I was up there in Ottawa, the hottest day that we had up there, which was, I think Friday was going to be like 86. Thursday was like, so while it was 101 down here, it was like 84 degrees up there, or 82. The only thing, but the bad thing is those Canadian wildfires, the smoke was quite visible up there in Ottawa. In fact, Tuesday I walked out of the hotel or whatever you want to call it there, and I could smell a little bit of wood in that smoke, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's definitely wood smoke. Whew. It was, was thick. And it wasn't. I mean, I don't have any breathing issues. It didn't cause me any problems. They said, oh, if you might cause you a little throat irritation or whatever, and I was like, I'm not sure if that's wood smoke or communism that give me throat irritation, but it's hard to say when you're that close to Chicago and Cook County. But anyway, people, it's we're gonna get. I know they said we wouldn't get enough rain out of this to, for it not to be to not be in a drought condition, but it would take us out of the extreme drought into a more of a mild drought. But boy, if it keeps this up for much longer. Good Lord, it's come down. All right, I got to get off subject. I'm staring out the window like some kind of smooth-brained human being. Just like, oh, look at the water falling from the sky. Good Lord.
Yeah, what's that stuff? I haven't seen that before.
I'm tired of feeling like I'm going to melt when I walk outdoors. Bam.
Well, we need something around here because we've had fireworks, going off, not big around here, but I know one person you and I both know here locally, Duncan was telling me that that somebody had set fire to the grass out in the field, by his house over there. Fortunately enough, they got it out, but playing with fireworks, and of course, people around here, there's too many that don't have sense enough to pour pee out of a boot with directions on the heel and a spigot on the toe. So they do this stuff, and it's bone dry.
Yeah.
And this is what you get when you have the irresponsible. But I hope this rain will put a dent in it.
Yeah, I never understood. I mean, I like fireworks as much as the next person. I like risking losing a finger every 4th of July. Hey, why not, But, in these type of drought conditions, I don't think people equate that to fire. It says fire in the name. It's a firework. Hence, it needs a spark to get it going.
Yeah.
You moron. So how about not playing with fire when we haven't been seeing? I mean, when you can look at the grass and step on it and you hear crunching sounds, probably not a good idea to. But I know the city did theirs last night. I guess they figure since they water, they got the sprinklers on the golf course, I guess they figure they must have watered the hell out of the golf course and decided it would be okay. And I'm like, that's great unless it goes wayward, and then you have a problem if you set a neighborhood on fire.
On dry land.
Yeah. So,
I know. In fact, I know usually, because when I was on the city council, I remember them talking about it. I was always privy to it, which, I don't know, I have mixed feelings about city being involved in fireworks because that's our taxpayer money going up in smoke. But having said all that, they usually have a fire truck down there.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah. So, but man, some of these people out here, this rain is a welcome thing, but the problem is what we need is a soaking rain, one of those things that just keep going all night and just literally soak into the soil. And these deluges just don't do it. They just run off and create floods and everything else.
Yeah, it's slowed down a little bit now. If it remains at the pace it is right now, it would be great. If it would go on for like this for like an hour, this would be perfect. Right at this pace. But it's just gonna. I'm talking about it, and it's just gonna shut off, and it's gonna move on, and I'm gonna sound like a freaking idiot. So there was one other thing. There was something that I wanted to discuss, and I mean, God help me if I could remember it. That would be fan-freaking-tastic. Well, here's something I want to touch on, and I want to preface this by saying, do I trust RFK? No. But here's what I find funny. So RFK was on. Oh my God, I'm smooth-brained. Today, Joe Rogan's podcast talking about stuff, and then you have this other physician come out and blast RFK. And yes, and it got up to like $1.5 million. Like, come on, and he won't. And then the liberal media makes excuses for him, like, oh, he doesn't want to lend any credence. Why talk to some uneducated buffoon about vaccines. You know, if I'm going to have an appreciation for someone like RFK, here's where my appreciation lies. Because he comes on and he's not out here spreading misinformation as much as they would love you to believe that. There's no misinformation in what he's saying about vaccines. And they call him an anti-vaxxer, and he's like, I'm not against vaccines. What I'm against is that all the vaccines that we stick, I'm as guilty of it as anybody else. I'm not saying that I did not do it. When I didn't know, my butthole from a hole in the ground, I had my kids vaccinated, all right? I'm not saying I didn't do that. I was unaware, of course I was unaware, because they don't teach you these things, that every single one of those vaccines are not safety tested against a placebo. And now they have protections afforded them by the federal government. Okay? That is a problem. And I appreciate that RFK is out there saying this to everyone. Any interview he gets on, this is brought up, and he's not out there. He's doing a very good job. I guess I should say it that way. He's doing an extremely good job of laying out the evidence. He talks about certain vaccines. Oh, yeah, it eliminated this illness, but you had a sudden uptick in deaths from 3 other illnesses caused by after this vaccine started to be given to kids in India or Africa or wherever. So I have a lot of appreciation for what he's been doing. Do I want him as a president? Maybe not. But what he's done on the vaccine and COVID front, I think we have to give him a pat on the back for that. Because you don't really see anybody else on the left saying what he's saying, regardless of who they are.
Don't.
They're being eerily silent.
Yeah.
Well, here's my biggest issue with him right now, and that is while he's good on this subject, he is still pushing the same environmental agenda.
Yeah.
The green agenda, the phony green agenda. Which is, of course, what's bringing up all these phony green companies and everything else, and we get soaked for it and all this kind of stuff. But here's another interesting thing. There was a meeting yesterday in Philadelphia by a group called Moms for Liberty. They wanted RFK to come and speak. RFK refused because he didn't like what they stood for. And so, my attitude is, okay, while he may be good on the shots, you can't have it both ways, But see, the thing you got to remember with RFK is he is still a Democrat, and he buys into the Democrat agenda for the most part. See, the Democrats would welcome him with open arms if he did not take on this vaccine issue. That's the only reason they are PO'd at him. And so there's where your problem is. And this is why, as I told one of our talk show hosts last week that I sent an email to one of our talk show hosts that is so enamored with Trump in this case.
Oh, yeah.
And I put in there, I said, where this ties in with RFK is, I said, and just in case, I said, anybody wonders who I'm voting for? I said, absolutely nobody at the federal level, because I'm not enamored with anybody. I'm just going to stick here with what we're doing in the state of Missouri to try to help the state of Missouri, and just be done with it, because I've had it. I mean, you got RFK Jr. doing what he's doing, great on the vaccines, but equally as rotten on a lot of other subjects. Then you got Trump, who out there basically is the president that doesn't know his butt from a hole in the ground, or at least he was. And he's out there now doing all kinds of childish name calling and all this kind of stuff like children in elementary school would do. Then you got Ron DeSantis out there, who on the one hand is doing a lot of good things in the state of Florida, but the one thing he and the legislature did do over there, which I don't want to see in the rest of the country, and that's E-Verify. Because, and this is something to think about. The border's open, right? So we got all the people coming in over the border. And at the same time, we're going to force all Americans to get permission from the government in order to seek a job somewhere. That's what E-Verify does. And this is why I've had it with everybody. I'm thinking, you guys got your head screwed on probably about 95% straight, and then the rest of you got your head up your rear end in the donut position.
Yeah.
That's where they're so blind they can't see, Sam.
It's all brown up there.
Yeah, and I don't know the difference.
Yeah, it is. Well, here's the thing. Because we're talking about this, and because I was just at the conference and everything is still fresh in my mind, that, the way the union, the people on the top and a lot of the members vote, okay? And they're like, we need higher wages, we need all these things. And I'm like, because they're supposedly pro-labor. But in my mind, as they're talking about these things, I was like, okay, let's say they're pro-labor union. But what do the policies, other than labor, the policies that they support or enact as far as taxation, regulation, all these things are going, completely against the grain. That would be not so pro-labor. If you're regulating a business, if you're taxing a business more, if you're doing these things, that means they're going to hire less people. They're going to pass those costs on to the consumer. They're doing all these things. So you have to keep asking for higher wages because the policies enacted by the people that you elect time and time again are fighting right back against the higher wages that you just won in a bargaining agreement. You're literally sitting there creating your own fight. You're creating your own battle because you're voting for people whose economic policies are awful. And even here in the state of Missouri, we had a chance. We could have eliminated the sales tax on groceries. But the leadership in this state doesn't want that. They don't want that. And folks, I'm going to tell you how bad leadership here is in the state of Missouri because I did an experiment at home. I did this. And I can tell you, this tells you how bad leadership is. We have an old Kirby vacuum. People remember the old Kirby vacuums? I mean, they were heavy sons of guns.
Yeah.
Big metal head on them, and, everything's beefy on them. It's just, you had to buy the vacuum bags. I have one of those. It wasn't working so great. You roll it over the carpet 10, 15 times in one spot. Just wasn't picking anything up. So I literally went to our Missouri House of Representatives site, the Missouri Senate site, and I got pictures of the leadership. And I printed them out. And I stuck them to that Kirby vacuum cleaner. And you know what? That vacuum cleaner started sucking again. So, that's how bad leadership is in this state and in this country. But we have people who just can't pull their heads out of their rectum long enough and to understand that the economic policies set forth, they think they're just going after the rich, or these people are going after because I heard that those two words, the three words, I guess if you're going to combine them, rich and powerful, the rich and powerful, 4 words, whatever, rich and powerful. I heard that over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, right? Rich and powerful, rich and powerful, rich and powerful. And there was no, I would have been wasting oxygen. I would have had to have gone out and apologize to the trees outside for wasting oxygen. But I wanted to say to them, you do realize that a lot of these rich and powerful people are also donating money to the candidates that you support. So, because they said they really hated subsidies from the government for these businesses. And I'm like, you think only Republicans take those subsidies? Really? You think only Republicans?
Look at all the Democrat companies, yeah.
Yeah,
I agree
buddy.
with you.
And I'm thinking, you guys are just full of crap. What's that?
What you ought to throw back at them is, okay, you guys might want to look at yourselves in the mirror because they ain't too poor either up there.
No, none of them are. None of those people. I mean, they have speaking engagements. I mean, some of these people get $10,000 to go talk to some group.
That's what I'm saying. Yep.
And it's just because Folks, I don't want to sit here and sound like I think every corporation out there just is amazing, because there's a lot of people that run or that are on the heads of the boards of those corporations that love a good partnership with the federal government. A, they get subsidies. B, they help to get they good God. They get to help write the regulations that put their competitors out of business. That's on the Republican side and the Democrat side, because what did Obama do with the Affordable Care Act? He brought in insurance companies to help write the legislation. The evil insurance companies that he talked about. He let the insurance companies come in and help write the legislation. And that...
Well, and here's the thing to think about on this. Corporations are a creation of government to begin with. They are an artificial entity. They are, in other words, you can talk to the CEO of a corporation, but you can't go up and touch the corporation. You can't go and talk to the corporation. You can talk to people that are within the corporation. But you can't talk that the corporation is just it's a fiction on paper, and its only existence is because of political chicanery with the government, and that's where the issue is. I mean, in the end, everybody's still all individuals. I mean, a corporation is basically, it's almost another form of a union in a way, except that they're, they are an artificially created entity. Now, there's nothing wrong with people getting together and collaborating together and trying to negotiate to make conditions better at their workplace. But see, the problem you got with corporations and unions is that in the case of unions particularly, they start out good. In fact, in the 50s, there were some cases where there were some problems, and unions came along and rectified some of it. But as with all things, this is where you get into the depravity of people, depravity of man. Once they get a taste of the things they want, then they want more, and they want more, and they want more, and they want more, and eventually they get to a point where they get to the point of ridiculousness. And I know this because I remember my dad telling me that when he was alive, he worked for a company that made railroad cars, box cars for the railroad, and he was telling me that it got so bad up there that if you had somebody that was lazy and just didn't want to work, and they just put their feet up on the workbench wherever they were working and just sit there and fall asleep, he said you couldn't fire them because it was in the union contract that you couldn't fire them. This is what I'm talking about, how things get to the point of no return. And then as we went along into the 70s and 80s, the unions started lining themselves up with the Marxists. Have you ever noticed how the Marxists love unions? And that's why they love unions, because the unions, in fact, how many people have ever checked to see where their union dues goes when they pay into the union? Probably not a lot, but I can guarantee you, if you dug around long enough, you probably figure out some political campaigns that your union dues would go to that you probably wouldn't like. And so this is what I'm saying by so many of these things like unions and corporations. Corporations do not have rights. People have rights. Corporations do not have rights because they're an entity created by government. Just like governments, state governments don't have rights. They have powers in the case of governments, but they don't have rights. And the problem is that when you get, tyrannical governments that use their power in an abusive way, but the problem is I hear people talk about states' rights, and it sounds great on the surface, but states don't have rights. I mean, they have powers, but they're states, just like all other governments. They're an entity on paper. I mean, they don't, other than the creation of the government. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm glad we got 50 states as opposed to one monolithic federal government running everything. But what I'm just trying to do is just set the stage that we have to constantly think back to the idea that all these things we talk about, corporations, governments, in the final analysis, they're all legal entities written on paper is all they are.
Well, and I've talked to, in fact, when I worked for a local pest control company, I got sent to a house a couple times to do an annual termite inspection. And this guy had been in World War II, and before he was in World War II, before he got drafted into World War II, he worked for he worked for a telephone company, right? And they were union. And I've heard more than one old timer from a union tell me this, that unions in their inception were great. He goes, because you knew who was at the higher up. He goes,
That's right.
But now they're on a 12-story building, 12th floor of some building somewhere. You don't know who they are. You never see them. And he said it's just not the same as it used to be. And now I will say this. Our dues are not allowed to go into political campaigns. There is a federal law for that now. But there is a way, it's called a VCAP. And you can voluntarily say like $10 a month out of your paycheck, and they have to use those funds to campaign or to contribute to campaigns, because I guess a federal law or some kind of law got enacted that you could not take union dues and put that money towards campaigns. So they have these VCAP committees. Every union has a VCAP committee. And they get people to donate that way, and that's sent to, the region, and the regional cap committee sends that money to, donates to campaigns and things like that. But you get this coming year, right before November 2024, I will have some really nice looking glossy toilet paper constantly hitting my mailbox. Now I'll have to round off the edges so I don't cut my butthole when I wipe with them. But I'm going to have a lot of well done, shiny, glossy, really thick paper. It's not like the John Wayne toilet paper you get at work, the stuff that's rough and tough and doesn't take crap off anybody. It'll really cut the crap. But yeah.
Well, we see plumbers going all the way down to John's house, rows of trucks, doing plumbing work. Will say, "What the hell did he do? Did he throw all those glossies down that toilet?"
Yep, I wipe my butt with them. I mean, I can remember people telling me, like my mom telling me about her grandparents didn't have an indoor toilet for years, so they literally had a Sears, Roebuck catalog or a Montgomery Ward catalog. That's what you wiped your hiney with, and when you had an outhouse. So, I mean, this is just thicker. I mean, it's really you want to, instead of the quicker picker upper, it's going to be the thicker picker upper, because you're really gonna you're gonna really wipe your tush with that really high dollar. But yeah, in 2020, 2016, it was just, I got bombarded. I was almost to the point where I went to a union meeting with a stack of them and slammed them on the table and said, "Hey, how do I get you guys or how did I get those guys not to send these to my house? Because you're wasting your money. You're wasting VCAP money, because I'm taking them, I'm looking at them, seeing the picture on the front, and dropping them directly into the trash can." If if they would send me one that was like, I don't know, 16 by 20 or something like that, where I could pin it up and use it as target practice, that'd be great. But I don't want to shoot at some like little 3 by 5 postcard, because let's say I want to shoot at something that's, instead of 7 yards, which you normally do for concealed carry training, I want to put it out 60 yards. That 3 by 5 postcards would be a little hard to see with pistol sights. So yeah, if you're gonna send me something big that I can, tie up to something and then put a bunch of holes in it, and then because then that's not wasted money, because I'm enjoying firing, shooting a firearm, and then I don't have to go buy a target because you've given me something.
There you go.
But yeah, and that's, they did make a true statement up there that politics is involved in everything in our life. And I'm like, yeah, they're right on that. Politics is everywhere. And if you don't, and they did say something else that was really true. They said if you don't pay attention to politics, politics still pays attention to you.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely right. And, what they're saying is, of course, what I say. I say you got to pay attention. And when I was up there, I did bring up a couple times, they said something about, I don't understand how these states don't have an income tax. And I said, well, they have super high property taxes, and so they level the playing field with super high property taxes. That's how they don't, that's how they get away with it. That's why they do it. They just get them somewhere else, for the most part. And I did talk about the fact that I have gone to the Capitol in Jeff City, and I have walked with a group of grassroots organization, or of a grassroots organization, and I said we tried to get rid of, the sales tax on grocery, and I explained it very well. I didn't explain it very well. I was very blunt. I said because it helps everybody. Everybody goes to the grocery store for the most part, and that would help everybody no matter how much money I made. And I didn't get an eye roll. I didn't get I didn't hear any dry heaving, any gagging. People were receptive to that. Now, I didn't say that I was with a conservative group or a libertarian group because that's unimportant. The important part of the whole thing is what we were trying to accomplish. We were trying to do something that affected everyone in the state of Missouri and not just a select group of people, which is the most important thing. And that's, I don't know. Again, they were right. If you don't pay, you may not pay attention to politics, but politics pays attention to you. And I was like, well, you know what? Kudos to you because you got that right. But the people you choose to support, I have a little bit of an issue with that. You make me want to regurgitate whatever I just ate. And other than that, And I know people are probably thinking I'm strange because I'm more of a liberty-minded person, but I'm in a union and I participate in the union. But folks, let me tell you something. I chose to go work at a union factory. I knew they were union. I chose to work there. I was not forced to work there. And since they get so much of my money once a month, I want to know what's going on. It's just like with your taxes. You pay taxes out of all your check, and you got. I mean, how? If you tried to list off the top of your head how many taxes you pay out every year, you couldn't do it. But you want to know where that money goes, and it's the same way with the union that I belong to. I want to know how the money's being spent. I want to know what they're doing, and so I participate. But I am also not naive enough to think that if that union wasn't there, we would be in there 7 days a week. We'd work multiple 12-hour days a week, and they'd probably give us like $12, $13 an hour. They would pay us the least amount they could, and they would just absolutely hammer, worse than they do now with overtime. We'd be in there 7 days a week. I know without that union that working conditions would be horrible. It would be nice to find a happy medium where you didn't have this left-wing loonyism going on, and that the understanding, the true economic understanding was there of how government and corporations interact, how your tax money is spent, the central bank, how it works, and a lot of other things. I wish that knowledge was there too. Like one person said, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink, but you can splash a bunch of water in their face. I think is how they said it. It's kind of funny. Something like that. But unfortunately, these people, it's again, sometimes, you have politics. You have some people in religion, and even in the union, and sports, almost any big topic that you can talk about, think about in this country, you have people that treat it like a cult. You have it in politics, you have it in religion, you have it in the unions. They just regurgitate what they hear, but they don't take the time to think it through from one point to the other. That you have to look at a policy by its outcome and not its intention. Too many people base it on intent instead of outcome, and as long as that continues to happen, things will not improve. But I get a little sick of the cult mentality in the in the Democrat Party, the Republican Party, some of them in the Libertarian Party, in unions, in religion. You know, I've talked, I know Sam and Trish, you've talked about some people go to church and they take their brain out at the front door and they set it in the box and they pick it up on the way out. And they don't think about what they're being taught inside that church. It could be wrong.
Yeah.
We have that in so many things in this country. Are you going to get people out of it altogether? No, you're not. Because sometimes it seems like that's human nature, and maybe it's not. But the fact is, however you want to say it, you got to put on your thinking cap. You got to do something. You got to do better. You got to put a little thought into things, for the love of
here's
God.
What I always recommend. Here's what I always recommend with people that I talk to. You don't want to be one of these kind of people that just blows around with the wind and just change your opinion based on one person that you talk to or whatever just because. But if somebody can show you a thorough amount of research as to why something that you think is wrong, you should at least give it some consideration. I can't tell you how many times over the years that I've even in my march, and Trish can tell you this too, in our march through the conservative media over the years, things that we thought that we knew that we really didn't know, and your thoughts evolve as you're in the journey longer, and you start realizing. I mean, for example, we were one time. I mean, if somebody would ever told us that the Republicans were just as crappy as the Democrats, we would have told them, "Well, you're crappy too."
Well, I would have said, well, it I don't know. I wouldn't have said that they were crappy, but I would said something like something.
Well, see, when you started out, Trish, I remember when you started out, when you were a kid in school, while everybody else was
Democrat,
you were Republican. I think part of that was because of the way. See, your parents, wasn't it your mom or?
She said we didn't raise you that way.
Yeah, in other words, somehow, because we raised you to be a Democrat, then by God, you're a Democrat.
I'm not.
Never deviate off of that plantation.
I wasn't because of that reason alone. I wanted to be my own person.
Yeah.
So I wasn't because of that.
Yeah. So, I mean, she's been a critical thinker over a long period of time. But see, there again, as we moved along, you find that as you go along from your entrance into a journey, that you will over time start to uncover things that you didn't know before. And as you learn more and more information, you'll either discover one of two things: that what you thought the whole time was totally wrong, or maybe something you thought was partially wrong, or just not quite over the target, or maybe, depending upon your journey, you may find that something that you thought was right on all the time. It just depends on how you come into this and how you how you started dealing with these issues at an entry level, and then of course as time went along. I mean, in our case, I think what really woke us up woke me up. I can at least explain in my case was, it's sad to say, everybody get out their stomach distress bags now. I voted for Bush Jr. God, gag me with a spoon. It was the worst mistake I ever did, because, I mean, he was just as bad as the Democrats as far as tyranny and everything else.
Yeah, he was.
Then we had Obama, and then he was certainly rotten to the core. Then Trump came along, and there were those that worshiped Trump. Now, at the very, very beginning, I started believing in what he was doing, because at first we had some pretty good things going. We had him, trying to get the United States out of the Paris Climate Accord, for example, and we had more domestic oil exploration going on over here in the United States. But then what did he turn around and do? Then he signed us on to the USMCA, which replaced GATT and NAFTA, and then he started appointing all the very globalists he claimed he was against. And then now he he's gone off to the World Economic Forum, and he came out of there promoting these things. He calls them freedom cities, but when you dig into them, they're actually these 15-minute cities.
15-minute cities, according to Agenda 2030.
Yep, so he's promoting that. And so you had that going on. And, of course, now we have this poor excuse for a president, and so on and so forth. And after a while, it's like, hey, I've had enough of this. I'm tired of getting my butt burned every time I vote for somebody. So on the federal level, I'm done. I mean, I've had it because every
they're
time.
Lost. They're a
so,
lost cause.
Yep. So, it's taken a while to get to this point, but it seems to be here on the state level where the real fighters are. I mean, and at least, like for example, on state level, at least when we look at people like Bill Eigel, Mike Moon, and I'm just using those as an example, we've got real track records we can work with here versus. And I'm just using those two as an example. We got track records we can follow, past legislation that they've done, the stuff they're currently doing. It's a fight. You still have a fight because you still got your rhinos even on the state level, but you have a much better chance on the state and local level of affecting change as opposed to what you can do on a federal level. The only problem that we have here are the metropolitan areas, and I'll take you back to a comment that a preacher made that we air on a radio station on Sunday mornings. Chuck Baldwin, who, by the way, back in 2004, was vice presidential candidate running with Ron Paul. And Chuck Baldwin made the statement during one of his sermons that the more metropolitan areas there are in any given state, the less freedom there is. And he's exactly right, because look at probably one of the worst places is, the three worst places is New York, Illinois, and California. All of them have massive metropolises, New York with New York City and Buffalo, New York, and those are just two I can think of right off the bat. Illinois with Chicago. Chicago is Illinois' biggest albatross hanging around its neck.
Chicago is Illinois' millstone, they're all bottom of the sea.
Yeah, and so you got Chicago, which is almost the way it operates almost is a state within itself. That's why Southern Illinois was wanting to break away from them, start their own state. Whether they'll ever get away with it or not is another matter. But then you got California. California probably has more massive metropolises than probably any other state in the union. And California is just horrible when it comes to making it. In fact, trying to make a living over there, they're already banning diesel trucks from going in and out of there. The ban is scheduled to take effect here within the next few years. I'd like to know how they're going to get food over there. But anyway, that's what they're doing. And, that is some of the strange environmental stuff that's going on there. But remember, a lot of this stuff is hatched by people in large metropolitan areas that have never had to make a living in their life in a meaningful way. They've never understood how their food gets to the grocery store, other than the fact they just go down there and buy it. They have no idea what it takes to run a farm or anything like that. So, you talk to some of these people, they just think the food just comes off the grocery store shelf, and it's like, well, how in the hell did you think it got over there? That kind of stuff. And these are the people that are making decisions that eventually spill over every place else, is what I'm trying to say.
No, you're exactly right. It's again, we have people who it lends to two things. It lends to the education system that is, unfortunately in our public full system, and then at home. Parents just not explaining to their kids, because they expect the school to do it for them, I suppose, how the world really works. And unfortunately, when you depend on the public schools to teach your kids everything, even things like that, how does food get from the farm to the grocery store. And some of that, which I just had an interesting conversation with somebody a little while earlier about, it doesn't help that, the parents just rely on the school to teach their kid everything. And then the school tells them, oh, you don't want a dirty job, you don't want to go to a technical college. Go to college, get some meaningless degree, rack up $50,000 in student loan debt, and come out of there with no job and no idea how the world works because you got taught complete and utter, nonsense while you were at that university. And there's not enough parents and there's not enough people setting the tone and saying, hey, dipstick, do you think there's a grocery fairy that comes in once a week and waves its magic wand and puts all the food on the shelves? How do you think that gets there? Do you think they're going to airdrop your groceries into you every week? You're just going to get online and order it, and they're just going to, it's going to be a big crate with a parachute, and it just lands on your lawn, and you just carry it from the lawn inside your house. But at the same time, you wonder, I know these people go down the highways. What do they think those trucks are full of? They just think there's just empty, and they're just driving around because it's more fun to drive with 45 feet of empty container behind you than in a sedan? Putting up all the idiot drivers around them? I'm just trying to figure out where that mentality comes from. That and again, the cult, the environmentalist cult, that these people will put their own well-being in jeopardy. Diesel trucks that carry the groceries. Oh, we don't want diesel trucks in here anymore. Well, okay, okay, Einstein, how do you suppose your food is going to get to you now? That restaurant that you like to go to, they're not going to get their order. They're not going to get their shipment. So good luck going out to eat. Good luck going to the grocery store and getting your items. Hey, Einstein, did you get into such a cult status in your mind that you literally were the maker of your own undoing? That you literally ruined your own life because you were worried about this blue-green ball, as George Carlin said, just floating around the sun? That you in turn are your own undoing. Now that's pretty freaking sad. That you stoop to that low of level of a mentality, and you can't even fathom. You can't even build this thought and this idea that, hey, I might be screwing myself in some way. And anatomically, that's pretty hard, but I'm sure giving it a good shot. So it's...
Once again, visual connotations do apply.
Yeah, right. But it lends to, the thing we're talking about here. I don't know. It's freaking scary. These people... I'm going to say what other people say, and it's probably not nice, but I don't care. These people reproduce and they vote.
They do.
And what are they going to do?
Yeah.
And they're going to open up their kid's head. They're going to pop it open like a soda can, and just dump their garbage into that kid's head. And it just, again, as we've talked about so many times, socialism, Marxism is a slow drip. If you want to put the frog in the pot of water, whatever. Doesn't get it. We didn't get here in one day, and we won't turn it around in one day. All these cliched things that we say all the time. But it's true. We didn't get here in one day. We didn't get here in 1 year. We didn't even get here in 1 decade. This has been decades upon decades of building. But it's simply that. These parents that leave it to the school to educate their kid, and then these same parents watch BS news on TV. So the kid, unless he's pre-wired, you just get some people that when they're born, they just think differently. They think everything through. Their parents can be completely different from them. For some reason, they're hardwired with this logic and critical thinking and everything else. And they just, I mean, from the time they start school, they're questioning everything. You know, and that would be great if we could get a lot more genetics like that. But
Yeah.
the schools and the parents are just filling their kids' heads with complete and utter nonsense. And if they don't get out of that way of stinking thinking, as Sam would call it, they'll do the same thing to their kids and the kids after that. Now, listen, I don't agree with it, folks. But I've heard people say, maybe some of these people need to be sterilized. I don't agree with it. I think that's wrong. But when you hear some of these people talk, you can understand why people feel that way. But I just about guarantee you the people that feel that way are probably in a cult-like
mentality. The same one.
Yeah, they're just on the opposite side of the political fence, and they're acting in a cult-like manner too. It's just those people don't agree with me, so let's sterilize them. But folks,
well, let's capitalize on what you were saying.
Sure.
The reason you don't want this mentality is because it's the same mentality with population control in general, and I always remind people, don't fall for that because you're not going to be the one to decide. Who's going to decide, you know? And I mean, there are some people out there that drive me nuts that you just wonder how they ever made it onto the plantation, you know, in one piece. But having said all that, the problem is once you start yelling about people needing to be sterilized and all this kind of stuff, the problem you run into is government is going to be the one to do it. And I'll give you a good case in point. Let's go back to the shots again, okay?
You're just trying to get me kicked off YouTube.
Once again, I just say how it is, you know.
I know.
How many people would have ever dreamed that those shots would have done what they did to some people? Would they have taken it if they'd known what they were going to do? And I would say absolutely not. This is an example of what I mean by with population control. You're not going to be the one to decide. In fact, you'll probably be the one, if you buy into the population control agenda and you don't think critically, you will probably be the one to walk right into the trap. So this is why we have to be so careful in our fit of rage what we ask for. And I'm not saying I have all the answers. The problem is we do have a menace of these people floating around. About the only thing you can do is try to reach the few you can reach. The one thing I did hear, which was kind of encouraging the other day, and I hope indeed it's true, and that is the fact that we're seeing more and more of young people drifting over toward libertarian circles and even conservative circles as opposed to buying into the progressive mindset because they've been affected the most, you know, through all the transgenderism and all this kind of stuff that's affected so many of their friends and all this kind of stuff. So there may be some positive signs there. I don't know. I'm not a person who normally buys into a lot of these studies and these polls and stuff, but if indeed it's true, that would be pretty encouraging. But it's going to take more than just emotionally drifting over there. You got to really, anybody that goes that adopts a new mindset, if they're going to really adopt it and adopt it well, they have to understand why they adopted the mindset, what the mindset is truly all about. Like, for example, libertarianism. What is libertarianism? How many people would even know? And it's kind of hard to define because you got different factions within libertarians. You got the Mises Caucus, which I would align with more than any other thing in libertarianism, and that would be the Mises Caucus. In conservatism, it's really hard to say because I see a lot of stupidity out of conservatives these days. So, you know, it's really hard to say. In fact, I would say that probably most of the people that we carry on Missouri Liberty Radio are people that are more of the libertarian to conservative libertarian mindset, and that's pretty much where I lean. With some of the stuff I've seen coming out of conservative circles, I'm thinking this is your brand of conservatism. Then I don't want it, you know. And and then of course we really see what's happened with the Trump supporters that have come out, and they're just so gung ho worshiping at the feet of Donald Trump. And I'm saying, weren't some of you guys back in the 90s some of the same people that blame the Democrats for being symbolism over substance that fell at the feet of Bill Clinton? You know,
you're doing the same thing,
doing
except
the same
on the
thing.
opposite side.
Yeah, and I'm saying you don't worship anybody. When a politician does something good, you congratulate them for doing something that's good, but to literally bow down and lick their feet because they're bigger than God, so to speak, the way these people seem to behave, that's where I part ways, because they're going to, I don't care who it is. DeSantis, he's done some good stuff in Florida. Trump has done some good stuff, although he quickly just went back to his New York Democrat roots, really. RFK is good in one area with the vaccines, but in a lot of other areas, he's just like the rest of them. You know, you just keep going down the pipeline here. And this is why I say you can't, you just congratulate them when they do something good, and you point out the stuff they do good. But when they do something that's not good, you point that out too. And you don't do personality worship. That's the most dangerous thing I think I see today more than anything else, particularly when it comes to Trump supporters right now.
Yeah, you know, you made a comment a while ago, and I now I want to tell a very short joke, and because I can't help it, you brought the joke to mind. So this pirate walks into a bar, right, and he's got a steering wheel in his crotch. And the bartender goes, "Hey, buddy, you got a steering wheel in your crotch?" And he's like, "Arr, and it's driving me nuts." Anyway, with that being said, couldn't help it. You said it drives me nuts, and it brought that joke to mind. That's how my freaking brain works. Well, guys, we're getting up close to 2 hours, and I want to have time to get this edited and back up on the server for tonight. It's been a great show as always, and I want to have you on. I tell you what, next month I want to have you back on, just because I know you're getting ready to interview this gal, and you've been going down this rabbit hole on the child trafficking and everything. So you crank out a couple more episodes, and I want to have you back on, and I want to go with that. I want to get into that topic, and I want to delve deep, because that's something that I haven't talked about on this show. So I figure, why not do that? We can get into it on my show, so that way
you can brassify your stomach a little bit too. It's easier to take.
Yeah, I'll drink a half a bottle of Pepto before we start. So,
there you go.
But thank you.
Yeah, well, we'll be doing that. I got that going on. Also, we're going to try to bring Travis back from the Prepared Homestead. I've been trying to contact him because I want to do something with him. And but we got a whole host of things coming up here. But yeah, this deal with the child trafficking, this really hits close to home, because see, while Trish and I never experienced the stuff that these people have experienced, we have experienced stuff in the state schools. Because see, what your audience may not know, we attended boarding schools. The blind schools were boarding schools. Our parents dropped us off there, and we were there most of the time, except for
our parents were convinced to send us there.
Yeah, and so
by conferences.
Yeah, so they would drop us there, and we were there most of the time. I mean, we only had summer vacation off, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Easter, and that's really about it. And so we spent a lot of time as wards of the state, and there's a lot of crazy stuff that went on. Some people had worse, weird stuff than I did and that Trish did, but it goes downhill from there. In fact, on the next show, maybe I'll explain to you guys what the MMPI test was all about. That was an interesting deal. And I'll put it to you this way, just to whet everybody's appetite. This test was supposed to be a test to see what you were suited for in employment, and to give you an idea how useless this test was. Now, keep in mind, before I tell you this, both of us can't see a thing in front of our face. We're both totally blind people. When they gave us this test after it was all over with, I was told that I was suited well for truck driving. So, I mean, you can't make this stuff up. But this is, we'll get into that test more and more, because that test was, I mean, there was stuff I just plain didn't answer on that test. And we'll have to explain what did that stand for, Trish? MMPI.
Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Index.
Yeah. She can remember all them long, stretched out things. But that test was, you can't even find them online. I tried to find it because I was going to try to send it to people to show people what it was like, and they don't even have them online. I mean, these are things that they kept very close to home. But some of the questions that they ask on those tests, only somebody from the state could dream up. And so we know, and this is why the child trafficking thing hits close to home, because these people have had it 100 times worse than we did. But there's certainly room where this stuff certainly, I guarantee you, happened in some of the state schools. Because Trish can tell you about some of the crazy stuff that went on in her school that was even worse than mine. She went to the Missouri school, I went to the Illinois school. And so we can hit these issues from a very unique perspective. And that's why it's very, very important that people understand that you have to be so careful. Don't let anybody convince you, well, send your kid here, send your kid there. You want to make doggone sure beyond the shadow of a doubt before you send your kid anywhere. That you know exactly what's going on.
First of all, you need to learn all you can about the kid's handicap. It deals with handicapped people. And in this case, you need to learn all you can about the child's handicap before you send them anywhere.
Yeah, and the other thing, you have to try to learn to overcome the handicap. Don't make it worse.
No.
In other words, don't shelter them. Some of the people I know that have had handicaps, the parents just told them, hey, you just can't see. Get your butt out there and get in the game just like everybody else. And that's the way really it should be. And when Trish and I were living over in St. Louis, I had a chance to do some of that. I worked with a guy for a while, a blind guy. He's deceased now, by the name of Jim MacArthur. And Jim was just as blind as we are. Jim had his own heating and cooling company. But see, what made Jim so rough and tough is before he got into all that, he used to work in the Department of Corrections here in the state of Missouri. And so even though he was blind, he was right in those prisons, right amongst some of them inmates. So he knew how to be rough and tough if he had to be. And but I liked him because you knew exactly where he stood.
Yep.
And so I learned a lot from him. And some of my best breaks have been after I got out of school. I only had one teacher that I have any regard for when I was in school. And that's really about it. The rest of it, I could have cared less.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but I'm just basically saying, Trish and I have worn the T-shirt on some of this stuff, so this is why we come at this from the perspectives that we have. And we'll get into this and a whole lot more on the next show, John.
All right, well, that sounds great. Thanks again, guys, for joining me.
Thank you.
Again, I'll have this up to the server here in just a few minutes. So, all right, folks, well, that's going to do it for this broadcast, this podcast. And again, I greatly appreciate the support of everyone. But don't forget, folks, every Sunday night, 6 to 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. Now, it used to be 7, now it's 6. Check out MOLibertyRadio.us and check out Sam and Trish's show, Off the Cuff. You will not be disappointed. Sam and Trish, I'm going to let you go so I can get this done. But again, folks, I have to, every time I have Sam and Trish on, I have to remind everyone who might be new to my podcast or to the YouTube side or the radio side of things. I have to remind you, these are the folks that gave me my very first shot years ago with Re-Education Radio, and then the Push for Liberty, and now the Missouri Liberty Report. So I always have to give them a big thank you, because without these folks, I wouldn't have gotten the start in this Liberty thing. I don't believe I ever would have without them. And so that's first. And then second of all, I wouldn't be on the radio. I probably wouldn't be doing any podcasting Well, I know I wouldn't have been. I wouldn't have been doing any of this if it wasn't for this fine couple. So I want you to show them some love and some support and join them in the show. And please, if he opens up the phone lines, call in, ask him questions, come in with your commentary. I know they'd love to hear from you. So again, Sam and Trish, thank you so much for everything you've done for me and helping me get this whole thing going and your continued support. I really appreciate you two.
Thank you.
Absolutely, and thank you for being such a great brother and cohort in marching forward and kicking progressive butt disturbers to the curb.
Absolutely. You guys have a great weekend, and I'll try to check in tomorrow night.
All right, see you then, John. God bless, and God bless to your audience. It's good to hear everybody in there tonight. You guys all have a blessed weekend.
All right,
Thank you.
Yep, take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Good night.
All right, folks, that's Sam and Trish with Off the Cuff, from the Off the Cuff radio show. But also, again, don't forget to check out MOLibertyRadio.us, especially on Sunday nights from 6 to 9 p.m. Central Time. Okay? Greatly appreciate if you'd show them some love and show them some support. So, well, with that being said, folks, it's been another great show. Again, appreciate Sam and Trish for everything they've done to help me out and to be supportive of me and give me a beginning in the podcast and the whole radio venue. It's been a real blessing to have them along and well, to help me get started and have them along for the ride. Gotta always gonna have real appreciation for those two. So with that being said, again, next week I will be joined by Senator Eigel right here on the Missouri Liberty Report. I hope you join in as we talk about his exploratory run for governor. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend. All right, now that I'm done with the stop the recording, again, thanks to all. I know this is a completely different time. It threw you all off. Next week, this coming Friday, I will be back to my normally scheduled time at 6:30 p.m. and I should be able to hold that out. I did not get home until 6:30 last night, and I was not going to rush up here. I was dog tired. I wasn't going to rush upstairs and try to start, and I didn't know exactly what time I was going to get home anyway, so it made it nigh impossible for me to know that I would be here on time to do a show. So again, thanks to everybody who watched and joined in. Catherine, Agarizer, KC Rich, Gary Ride, Ganai, and Dark Helmet. A couple people, Dark Helmet said he finally caught a live. I appreciate that. And Agarizer, don't see him in here all the time, but I appreciate him being in here as well. Thanks to everybody. Have a great weekend. And we'll see you next Friday right here on the Missouri Liberty Report.